13 this morning. Revelation chapter 13. We'll begin with verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things, and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. There's a lot to unpack here in this chapter. And so we're going to take our time, try to get through it as best we can. This is always a chapter where people have lots of questions. What about this? What about that? In my commentary, in a novel, the brothers, I don't know how this name is, what this guy's name is, Karamazov or something like that, has a character called the Grand Inquisitor, who argues that given the choice of freedom or security, people will naturally choose security. And for years, there's been an intense debate in our country about the balance between security and freedom. And this issue is not as black and white as some might think. For instance, to have the security of health care, do we give up the freedom to choose our doctors? I want you to stop and think about that for a minute. For the ability for us to have good health care, do we give up the freedom for us to choose our own doctors?
Yes.
Should we?
No, but you do.
No. We do, don't we?
My employer insists I go to a certain pharmacy and a certain.
Yeah. Okay, so to protect our children from mass shooters in school, do we moderate our Second Amendment right for a person to own as many guns as he wants for any reason? and to give everyone the security of a basic income, would we be willing to pay higher taxes? These are all questions that we all face every day. And while we're talking about that, we all know what happened during COVID. And the government shut everybody down. And we obeyed the rule. Why? Because we were interested in security. And we give up our freedom to be secure. So in times of chaos, history shows that people desire security so much that they're willing to yield their rights to a leader who can promise security to them. And the Bible teaches that in the final 7 years of Earth's history, another great world leader will rise to power, not by force, but by people willingly saying, we will give up our freedom if you'll promise us security. And that final great world leader, along with his assistant, who will play a role in his ascent to power, is the focus of Revelation chapter 13. The beast out of the sea, the Antichrist. And before we go into the details of who the Antichrist is and what he will do, there needs to be some misconceptions corrected about him. He will be accepted, not rejected. And at the rapture, millions of Christians will suddenly disappear and the world will be thrown into chaos. And out of that will emerge the Antichrist, who will promise peace. Revelation chapter 6 and verse 2 pictures him as the rider on the white horse, who has a bow but no arrows. He needs no force to take over world power, because he will be able to bring order out of chaos. Number 2, he will be attractive, not repulsive. Satan disguises himself as an angel of light in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 4, so we can assume that the Antichrist will be attractive in his appearance. And in the eyes of the unbelieving world, the Antichrist will be alluring, since he will have a worldwide following. Number 3, he will be extraordinary, not ordinary. The Antichrist will be unlike any leader this world has ever seen. One writer said he will possess the eloquence of Abraham Lincoln, the charm of John F. Kennedy, the wit of Winston Churchill, the military genius of Napoleon, the vision of Martin Luther King Jr., and the intelligence of Albert Einstein. That's what it will take.
No, like Joe Biden.
I don't see Joe Biden in there anyway. So, has there ever been a time when you thought that guy might be the Antichrist? Anybody?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump?
I mean, look at his father.
What about Barack Obama?
Yeah.
When he was elected president, I heard a lot of people say, he's the Antichrist. Any others? Anybody ever heard of a man called Moshe Dayan? When I was growing up, my dad thought he was the Antichrist. Now he was a Jewish military man. Anyway, if you're like me, you wish the Bible would be clear and give us the name of this extraordinary world leader.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. John didn't give his name. He didn't give us, but he did give us 4 characteristics of the Antichrist in Revelation 13, verses 1 through 4. He says, I stood upon the sea, the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Here we have him being empowered by Satan. And we seen last week in the previous chapter about Satan being the dragon that's mentioned in chapter 12. The image of Satan, the dragon, standing on the seashore in Revelation 13:1 gives the impression of Satan summoning the beast from the sea, like a magician waving a wand over a top hat and bringing forth a bunny, if you can imagine that. But this beast is no bunny, and when Satan waves his hand over the sea, so to speak, out comes this horrible beast, the Antichrist. He will be gentle. The fact that the Antichrist will come up out of the sea indicates that he will be a Gentile. I didn't mean he'd be gentle, Gentile rather than gentle. So the sea in Scripture always represents the Gentile nations. And in the Old Testament, the prophet Daniel had a vision in which he saw 4 beasts emerging from the Great Sea. These 4 beasts represented the empires of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome, all of which were Gentile nations. He will be a powerful ruler. In verse 1, the beast has 10 horns, representing authority over 10 kings. And in the Bible, horns are symbols of strength. And the beast's 10 horns probably represent 10 nations over which the Antichrist will preside, and he will amalgamate them into one world empire under his reign. And this shows that the beast is the Antichrist, and he is a real person, not merely the personification of evil. Like the dragon, the beast has 7 heads. The beast has 7 heads on which are tattooed blasphemous names, reflecting his opposition to God. And the 7 heads represent all of the world empires in history from John's perspective. And as we'll see in Revelation 17, by John's time, 5 of these empires have passed. 5 empires have passed: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. 1 existed at the time. What was it? The Roman Empire. And 1 was yet to come. The 10-nation confederacy over which Antichrist will preside. The 10 diadems, or royal crowns on the horns, are symbols of political authority Satan will bestow on him. His power and his throne and great authority. In verse 2, it talks about there. And notice that the Antichrist possesses the qualities of 3 fierce animals. What are they? Leopard, bear, and a lion. And in Daniel chapter 7, these animals represented the empires of Greece, the leopard, Medo-Persia, the bear, and Babylon, the lion. He will appear to experience a resurrection. When do you believe that it says that he'll have a wound that should cause a man to die by a sword? Okay? So how is it he's not dead? Do you believe that Satan can actually raise someone from the dead? Does he have that power?
No.
Anybody know?
No, he does not.
He does not? Well, how does this happen then?
Illusion?
Illusion? How could that be? How could that illusion happen? All right, we have this great leader, this man that's ruling over the world. He's injured to the point where a normal man would be dead. Maybe he did die. So how is he resurrected from the dead? as it's speaking of here in this chapter?
Either he has the power or the Lord allows him. That's the only two choices.
You think the Lord would allow Satan to resurrect somebody?
He imitates Christ, right? Even that's what he tries to do, so.
What do you all think? How would you do that? How would you have a wound so bad that it would kill you, yet you live?
That's what I said.
Huh? Is that possible? Huh? Think about this, because we've read a lot here about how this could happen. What did the false prophet say? To create an image. And people were to worship that image. So, how would that happen? What kind of image would it be that people would worship? I mean, let's say we had, who do you think would be the greatest leader that we ever had? That we've ever had? Let's say it was Abraham Lincoln, and he got shot in the head. And for him to be brought back to life from that wound would be a miracle, wouldn't it? It would be a miraculous recovery, which he didn't do. But I'm trying to relate that to something that may happen to this Antichrist that people are going to see. You know, 150 years ago, when people would read this, what do you think they would have what do you think they'd had in mind about who the Antichrist was? And how would they have responded to the question of, if a man had a deadly wound and didn't die, how would he recover? What would they say? $150 years ago was a long time ago. Now, I'm asking you the same question. Do you think your response to that would be different than they were 150 years ago? Why?
Technology.
Technology. Technology. There's been a lot of advances in the medical profession in the last 150 years, right?
Right.
So things that would have killed you 150 years ago don't necessarily kill you today.
Yeah.
They can do some pretty miraculous things. Okay.
It's like, yesterday, did you see I forget who it was, at the back, this robot sitting there talking and moving his
Oh,
hands
yeah,
and stuff,
yeah.
You know?
When his eyes were blinking.
Could you, yeah, I mean,
There used to be a place in Disney World where it was called the Hall of Presidents. Anybody ever seen that? And all the presidents in the United States, wax figures. First time I ever seen it, I was like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Because Abraham Lincoln stood up out from his chair and gave a speech. And somebody else did too. Can't remember who it was. But anyway, when they would stand up, these wax figures stood up, gave speeches, and everybody, all of the other presidents that were sitting there would turn their heads and look at the person that was speaking.
technology. Man,
It's amazing.
yeah.
So when we think of this technology and the way things have changed, and our perspective on, I'm sure that there was times in the past, 150 years ago, people thought that other people were the Antichrist. And the thing about it is even in part of the books or the part of the chapters we've read, there were times when John was told to shut the book, right? Because it wouldn't be revealed to the end until the end. How is it gonna be revealed? Is the Bible not finished?
No,
It's not?
if it was already, the Bible's completed, but the instructions in the Bible's not completed, or Christ would come back, this would all been,
But is there gonna be new revelation? Huh? Any new revelation coming?
No.
Well, then how is it gonna be revealed in the end? If he's not gonna give us any more written words,
What does
how's
it,
it gonna be revealed in the end?
what does it say, for now we see through glass darkly? But things will become clear to we'll understand after it's.
How many times have you watched things going on and thought, that's what it's talking about in the Bible? And these things are gonna come to pass. Even though it's not written for us to see every little detail. When we see these things, what did the Bible say? When you see these things come to pass, look up.
Yeah,
Redemption draws nigh.
right.
So, when we think about the spiritual situation that the church was in 150 years ago, and they didn't see these things that we're seeing right now, why is it that our spiritual condition today is so much less than theirs? Because we see these things coming to pass. What are we supposed to do about it? Doesn't it concern us when we see these things coming to pass that things are rapidly progressing faster and faster and faster? Can't find my glasses. They're not ever in the right pocket when I'm standing up before anybody. Anyway, he will appear to experience a resurrection, and mysteriously the Antichrist will fall. There in chapter 13. Now that raises a lot of questions that we've already talked about. Does Satan have the power to raise somebody? And or is it the power reserved for God? And if it's reserved for God, does he temporarily give Satan the power to deceive people by raising the Antichrist from the dead? Or is there another possible explanation for this statement? We'll talk about that in verse 12. But I think people will believe a resurrection has occurred. They're going to believe that he's been resurrected and will follow after the beast because of it. And after the seemingly miraculous resurrection, the entire world will not only follow the Antichrist, but will worship him. Those who dwell on the earth will mock God, saying, who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war against him? So the activities of the Antichrist during his time on earth, the beast is noticeable for three activities: blaspheming God, attacking God's people, and deceiving the world into worshiping him. We see these three activities in Revelation chapter 13, verses 5 through 8. With permission from God, Satan will grant authority to the Antichrist to act freely during the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. And how will he act? Number one, he will blaspheme God. The Antichrist will blaspheme God's name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Antichrist will not only say horrible things about God, but he will claim to be God. Daniel said the Antichrist will exalt and magnify himself above every God. And Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians 2:4 that the man of lawlessness opposes and exalts himself above every other God. When the Antichrist breaks his peace treaty with Israel at the midpoint of the tribulation, he will blaspheme by calling himself God and sitting in the temple of God. Number two is he will attack God's people. He will make war on the saints. And then number 3, he will attract the worship of many. The names of the redeemed, including your name if you're a Christian, were written in the book that's talked about from the foundation of the world or the beginning of time, and nothing can ever erase your name from it. You are secure forever. For believers during the Great Tribulation, nothing that Satan or the Antichrist can do will snatch them from the hand of God, as Jesus promised. So, the response to the first beast, John suddenly paused at Revelation 13, verse 9, and addressed future readers of his book, especially those living at the time of the Great Tribulation. If any man have an ear, let him hear. If anyone's destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword will kill them. Here is the perseverance and the faith of the saints. The doctrine of the perseverance of the saints simply says that all true believers in Jesus Christ will persevere in faith until the end. How will we know who is truly saved? They will persevere until the end. I want to ask you a question right there. There are things that you believe that no one can change, right? Why do you believe it that way? I mean, what would be some things that you believe that nobody is going to ever change your thoughts about that?
Once saved, always saved.
Once saved, always saved. Anybody else? Any others? Beliefs that you believe, no matter what happens, you're not going to change that. It's not going to change for you.
Christ is the only way to heaven.
Christ is the only way to heaven. What else? Any others?
The Bible says faith comes without hearing. I mean, just learn more about the Bible and what God says, I think. Stepping stone to the way we believe that we put our faith in.
So there's things that we believe as adults that we've been taught all of our lives. That it doesn't matter what happens, we're not going to change what we believe, right? Well, what about a 15-year-old? What do you think they believe that will never change? Even if they're saved. You would hope that they would have some beliefs that were grounded in them so that they would never change those, right? But young people are different than that. There's a lot of influence. There's a lot of influence on young people to change the way they believe.
Yeah.
So I guess we better stop right there. No, that's a few more minutes. Anyway,
Brother Tim, how old was you? Can you remember back when you first, I mean, when you first, like, it really hit you about God? Not when you say, I mean, that you looked and you just like, you just knew it. I remember, I mean, I wasn't very old. I didn't even say it was 13, but I was pretty young. And I mean, that's something that's always stayed with me. I just like, you know, I just looked around, I thought, you know.
I was saved when I was young too. I was saved when I was 8 years old. For me to have gotten to a place where certain things were ingrained in me that I wouldn't change, I was probably 20.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah,
a little
you
older.
learn to
Yeah.
trust and believe, you know.
Because between that time that I was 8 years old and the time I was 20 years old, I had lots of questions. And I was searching.
Some of the grandparents, grandparents, or children nowadays, I mean, for a pastime or something, do they ever settle them down and talk to them about God? And really, you know, I mean, just look at the kids out there that never really hear you, unless they come to church or someone, that never really gets a, you know. It's sad, ain't it?
It's
Very
really,
sad. Back
it's
in-
really hard, because if you don't do that very thing you're talking about, from the time they're little until they're teenagers,
Hey, man.
you've lost it. You're not gonna go back and get that,
No.
even as grandparents.
Worse so today than it was years ago because of, technology and everything out there. Just like maybe right here, best, I mean, most critical thing you could ever do in our whole life, to keep her in a house of wool.
That's right.
Take her.
So I'm gonna go one more.
The rest of them,
Talk about one more thing and then we'll quit. The beast out of the earth, the false prophet. The false prophet is the third person of the satanic trinity, which also includes Satan and the Antichrist. Like the Antichrist, the false prophet is a real person backed by Satan. He will assist the Antichrist in his rise to power. The beast out of the earth speaks for Satan for himself, which is why he's called a false prophet. Everything he says is a lie. And one of the things I was reading this morning, the beast out of the sea was more fierce, more feared than the beast out of the earth. Why? When you stop and think about it, in these times that this book was written, they didn't know what was in the sea. Anything that come out of the sea that was extraordinary was fearful. They did know what about the earth. And things that come out of the earth were not as fearful to them as things that come out of the sea. So the presence of the false prophet that came out of the earth would have been less fearful than the beast out of the sea. We'll stop right there and we'll pick that up.
That's nothing more like